So Your Team, the podcast where we try to convince someone to join our side.
Today's team is one of the toughest, most underrated squads in all of sports, the United States Olympic Water Polo team. I'm Beckett.
And I'm Jack.
And today, we're both trying to convince Evan that water polo isn't just a sport. It's chaos, endurance, and precision all happening at once.
Evan, get ready, because by the end of this episode, you might actually care about water polo.
I don't know, this feels like one of those sports people only pretend to understand during the Olympics. But go ahead.
Let's start with the history, because this isn't just some random Olympic team that shows up every 4 years.
Yeah, the U.S. has been competing in Olympic water polo for over a century.
Whoa!
Going up against absolute powerhouses like Hungary, Serbia, and Croatia.
And Evan, it's time for our 60-second history.
All right, Beckett, 60 seconds.
Go! The United States Olympic Water Polo team has been competing since the early 1900s, making one of the longest-running Olympic programs in the country. The men's team has earned multiple Olympic medals, including silvers in 1984, 1988, and 2008, with the 2008 Beijing team making a huge run to the gold medal match. But the women's team is where the U.S. becomes dominant. Since women's water polo was introduced in 2000, the U.S. has built a dynasty, winning multiple gold medals including 2012, 2016, and 2020. They've been the standard of excellence for over a decade. What makes the program unique is its consistency. Across generations, the U.S. has stayed competitive, producing athletes who combine elite swimming endurance, strength, and tactical awareness. Water polo itself is one of the most physically demanding Olympic sports. Players tread water the entire time, fight constantly for position, and execute plays without ever touching the bottom. Over time, the U.S. has built a reputation for toughness, discipline, and performing under pressure. And that's your 60-second history.
Okay, I did not expect that level of dominance from the women's team. But I still don't really get what I'm watching then when I see clips of it.
That's actually a perfect question, and brings us into our next segment, which is a deep dive into the incredibly complex and cool rules of water polo. Because once you understand how the game works, everything changes.
Yeah, Evan, what part confuses you the most?
Honestly, it just looks like a bunch of people treading water and randomly throwing the ball. Like, how do teams actually score? Is there strategy, or is it just chaos?
That's the best question you could ask. What looks like chaos is actually extremely structured. I have had the pleasure to play water polo pretty consistently for the last couple of summers, and I would say it's really fun. Although it is grueling once you get into the strategy of it, you stop focusing on how tired you are and you're actually able to enjoy the sport.
Let us break it down for you, Evan.
Most teams run what is called a set offense, kind of like basketball. They form a semicircle around the goal, and then they pass the ball quickly around to move the defense.
But the key position is the center, also called the hole set, who's right in front of the goal.
And this is where it gets physical. The center is basically wrestling the defender the entire time, trying to gain an inside position.
And even if they get half a second separation, they can turn around and shoot from point-blank range. That's one of the highest percentage scoring chances in the game.
So it's not random at all. It's all about creating that one opening.
Exactly, and if the defense collapses on the center, the offense kicks the ball back out for a perimeter shot, kind of like passing out of the paint in basketball.
There's also something called an exclusion, which is huge.
What's that?
If a defender is too aggressive, like holding or pulling someone under, they get ejected for 20 seconds.
20 seconds might not seem a lot, but that creates a 6-on-5 power play, and this is where strategy really gets precise. Teams rotate the ball quickly, forcing the defense to shift until they create an open shot. Now, this might not sound like a lot, but I've played a couple games of water polo, and it really does unbalance the team, and oftentimes that's what creates a scoring chance.
These possessions are some of the most intense parts of the games because they're highly structured and usually lead to goals.
Wait, so there's like a man advantage plays, set positions, and shot creation?
Yeah, it's way closer to something like basketball or hockey than people think. Just in water and way more physically demanding.
And here's the craziest part. All of this is happening while players are constantly treading water. This is something called the egg beater kick.
I've heard of that, but what makes it so important?
It lets players stay stable and even lift themselves out of the water. When you see someone rising up to take a shot, that's all leg strength.
So imagine doing leg day, non-stop, while playing a full contact sport.
Okay, that's actually insane.
And that leads us into the identity of the team.
Water polo players are some of the toughest athletes out there. Period.
The sport demands endurance, strength, and mental focus all at once. You're constantly under pressure, physically and strategically.
And despite all that, it's still underrated in the US.
which means internationally, the US is often going up against countries where this is their main sport.
Especially on the men's side, they're always battling established powerhouses.
And even the women's team, despite being dominant, has a target on their back every Olympics.
So every match matters. Every possession matters.
Being a fan of this team means you're watching elite competition that most people overlook. But once you understand it, it's really hard to ignore.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, this is way more complex than I thought.
Alright, Evan, after the history, the strategy, and the absolute chaos of the sport,
are you sold on the United States Olympics water polo team?
You know, I didn't know anything about water polo before this, but I think now that I do, I think you guys did sell me on water polo.
woohoo!
Let's go!
Honestly, it is such a cool sport to watch, even if you don't understand it. It's just really cool to see all the grueling intensity of it.
Yeah, and I have to say, it's just as fun as maybe, Jack, you play football. It's just as fun, and like moving the positions there, there's that good strategy. And we really appreciate that we were able to convince you this time.
Alright, that's a wrap on today's episode of Sell Me Your Team.
I'm Beckett Bradshaw.
And I'm Jack Streit.
And we'll see you next time.
Until then, wait a minute. There is no next time. Yeah, that's right. This is the last episode of Sell Me Your Team.
Well, until never, choose your side wisely. And let us know on the Instagram at Sell Me Your Team Podcast. Did we sell you your team?